Thank you, Sophie. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And my name is Hong Yuli. Very honored to be here with all these amazing female leaders here tonight. And it's my great honor to welcome one of the most amazing nominees of today's award, Rajna Gibson Brandon. So Rajna is actually a professor from University of Geneva since September 2008. And then she was the founder and the director of Geneva Research Institute at the University of Geneva between 2009 and 2016. She is also the chairwoman and the managing director of the Geneva Institute of Wealth Management. Rajna also has been professor for University of Zurich, University of Lausanne, HEC Paris, as well as now University of Geneva. And her research has been covering asset pricing, experimental finance, and sustainable finance. Most importantly, besides her very successful academic achievement, she was also a BOD member at Swiss Re, and currently a member of the Bank Council of the Swiss National Bank, and a member of the board of Group BNP in France. She was also a former bank regulator at the Federal Banking Commission, now known as FEMA. It was a long achievements list, which I trust I didn't finish all of your amazing achievements. But without further ado, please, Rajna.
Thank you for the introduction. It's hard to keep the ball after that.
Actually, a very fun fact before we start this interview session between me and Rajna. Actually, when we first met over Zoom, I insist on calling Rajna professor. And Rajna was like, no, don't call me professor, just call me Rajna, very humbly. Because in my understanding, as a former student myself, finance has always been a big challenge. And it's not easy normally, especially for ladies to achieve such an achievement as what you have done in the academia world. And also, to my knowledge, there's not that many of female finance professors. So absolute a great honor to have you here today. And so regarding to today's theme, which is women's power for change, don't just digitalize but humanize, I have a question for you in the field, specifically in finance. What do you think in the field of finance that people can do to leverage the power of digitalization to improve actually the diversity of gender and also inclusion, which in terms of both hiring workforce at the same time of developing new finance products and service?
So as an academic, I always like to say the good things and the bad things. So I think on the good side, I think what women gain with digitalization is flexibility and a better work-life balance by being able to work remotely, by using Zoom and so forth. In terms of access to financial products and services, you have mobile payments today, you have trading apps, you can have robot advisors. But this is very superficial. I'm going to say three things that I think are important. The first one is that I think that digitalization will actually increase, not decrease, the gender gap. And the reason is that when I see students at the university, those that learn to code, to do artificial intelligence, machine learning are generally males, not women. So that's the first observation, that women are very reluctant to go into this engineering and understanding what's behind the black box. The second thing is that digitalization, to me, it's like when I have my car. It's a tool. It's not finance. So if you want to use digitalization in finance, you still have to be skilled in finance. So you will need to combine financial literacy plus digitalization. So that sets the bar even harder. And I think for many women who were in lower positions, with digitalization, they've lost jobs. So think about all the payment system traffics, and these women have to be retrained into higher qualification regarding jobs, and that's not easy. So in some sense, I'm optimistic. In some sense, I'm pessimistic. Maybe that's sort of the way I look at it. Yes.
Thank you very much, Rana. And actually, I fully agree with you. The improvement of skills in finance, which goes hand in hand, and with digitalization, otherwise it's just a tool or a buzzword in this day and age. So my next question is very much linked to finance then. If we consider finance and female leaders, what do you think female leaders, or let's say women workforce professionals, can drive the change in the development of finance in this day and age?
So I do something that's called experimental finance, and I don't do it with traders or portfolio managers because I have to pay the participants and I don't have a salary that enables me to pay them. So I do it with students. And what you learn in the lab is that men are more competitive than women, and that's why we're here competing, the 7 of us, but I hope we're all happy to be on stage here. So what I think women can bring is a more human way of looking at finance and promoting cooperation rather than competition. So that's very well known. The second thing I think is specifically when it comes to digitalization and artificial intelligence, if those of you who have learned about ChatGPT now, it's becoming very hard for a professor now to know whether a student has done his master thesis or whether it has been produced, bzzz. So the digitalization can enable women to improve their leading positions if it goes with ethics. And ethics, to my vision of finance, is key in the future of the world. We see that part of the failure of what we have seen in Switzerland these days is part of mistakes in corporate governance, in integrity. And the last thing that I want to say is that I think for women, to bring a change, it goes back to the first question that we are always asked at these... Sorry, can I just finish 1 second? That we're always asked at these panels, which is, how do you enable women to become leaders in the first place? And when I started my career, I was very much against quotas. I believed the market can do the change. But 30 years after, I have a daughter who's 18 years old today, and I see that things haven't changed much. If you look at boards in Switzerland, if you look at executive members, they're all male, mostly, in the high multinational companies. And so I think, if you don't have women on the top who can promote this change, it's very hard to accomplish it. So, or you have to incentivize men to hire women at the top. That's one way of doing it.
Thank you so much, Rajna. Very insightful. Actually, your answer is so thorough. It actually covers a number of other questions I have prepared and to ask you. And definitely, what I can guarantee you, that was the best class I ever had in finance. Okay, so now we gave the audience the floor to let's have a look at what our audience have for Rajna as questions. So, since I have the power to actually pick the first question, may I just go with the sequence? What is your vision regarding the current banking crisis and the rise of DeFi, decentralized finance?
So first, I have to make a caveat. I'm speaking as a professor here. I'm not speaking in my role as a member of the Swiss National Bank Council, because obviously that I cannot do. So my view of this is that there's 2 things that are important in banking. One issue is trust and confidence, and the other one is liquidity. And what you can see with what we have observed with Credit Suisse was, in my view, a series of poor corporate governance and poor strategic decisions, which led to gradually a crisis of confidence. Now, when you lose confidence and suddenly people start to withdraw their assets, liquidity you can have good liquidity, coverage ratios, but in a minute, this can turn down. So I think really you need trust and confidence, and you need liquidity. This, to my view, is the key concept which brought us where we are today because of the turmoils in terms of liquidity and bank runs from the States that hit a very vulnerable Swiss bank, which was Credit Suisse. That's my personal view. I have to repeat it.
Thank you very much, Rajna. Now let's have a look at another very interesting question. How can women in finance leverage technology to drive change while still maintaining a human-centric approach? Very kind of like a theme-centric topic question regarding to tonight's theme. So what do you think, Rajna?
So I think it relates to what I said before. I think what you need when you drive this change into a more digital world, you need an interdisciplinary approach, which is basically, since we're talking about finance, you need digitalization, but you also need some psychology of change. And also, I think psychology that helps you deal with something that, if you have artificial intelligence, is very key, is emotional intelligence. So that's one thing. And if your artificial intelligence programs are all made by men, they're going to have male-driven cognitive biases. So we want them to have also woman cognitive biases, for instance, more cooperation, less competition. And the second thing is integrity. So I think really where women perhaps are more, they're less prone, so you see it in the lab, they're less prone to financial incentives and maybe more prone to making governance based in ethics.
Very interesting. And actually, I love this question a lot because I can relate so much myself. You mentioned that your female students are less interested in coding. Okay, hands up. More generally, what should we do to attract more females in finance then?
So I try to say to my daughter she should learn computer science, and she's going to actually psychology, so I failed. So this is a tricky question for me. I think it has to start already in the primary school, where we develop these biases that men are better in computers, they're better in math, women are more for literary things. So I think it's not at age 25 that you're going to change things. I think it changes at kindergarten. It changes if the gender, these cultural gender biases are changed when people are growing up at age 7 up to age 20, 25. I think at 25, when they are finished with a master program, it's too late. So I think it's really a cultural change to get women out of these stereotype models where we lived for centuries. So that's
Absolutely agree. I think it is also an ongoing process which takes both the internal force from parenting at the same time of external force with the society to encourage people not to judge the book by its cover or stereotype women just belongs to literal and man belongs to science. We can lead the world in both walks of life and then excel at it. Right? Okay, thank you so much, Professor, for this wonderful answer. And then I think we still have time for one last one. Okay. Is crypto a hype or a real thing that can be a part of our lives in the future? What do you think?
So I have a very cautious perspective about crypto. I think it needs even more financial literacy because I think for a lot of people, so there was a study by the BRI that the average citizen in Europe lost 76,000 Swiss francs. It's pure speculation based on no fundamentals. So I think cryptos that are secured by tangible assets, if you take the tokenization, I think that's okay. But there you need some kind of enforcement either by market discipline, and if market discipline fails, you need to regulate. There's no way you just regulate banks, and banks have an over-regulation on the top of their heads in terms of compliance, and then you let a whole other part of the market be totally free and totally subject to, dark money trading and recycling. So I'm quite cynical about the way crypto has been used in many, many instances. That's my personal view.
Thank you so much, Rajna. Very insightful discussion from the beginning. A round of applause, please. Before I leave the floor to Sophie, anyone who are still interested in discussion with our amazing nominees, we still have chance both during the dinner and later on at the another half-hour dessert.